Back in Channel's Secret Paradise. Hello everyone. How are you today? May we all always be healthy. This time we'll talk about tomato plants are generally much branched, spreading 60 to 180 centimeters, 24 to 72 inches, and somewhat trailing when fruiting, but a few forms are compact and upright. Leaves are more or less hairy, strongly odorous, pinnately compound, and up to 45 centimeters, 18 inches, long. The 5-petaled flowers are yellow, 2 centimeters, 0.8 inch, across, pendant, and clustered. Fruits are berries that vary in diameter from 1.5 to 7.5 centimeters, 0.6 to 3 inches, or more. They are usually red, scarlet, or yellow, though green and purple varieties do exist, and they vary in shape from almost spherical to oval and elongate to pear-shaped. Each fruit contains at least 2 cells of small seeds surrounded by jelly-like pulp. The plant requires relatively warm weather and much sunlight. It is grown chiefly in hothouses in cooler climates. Tomatoes are usually staked, tied, or caged to keep the stems and fruits off the ground, and consistent watering is necessary to avoid blossom end rot and cracking of the fruits. The plants are susceptible to a number of pests and diseases, including bacterial wilt, early blight, mosaic virus, fusarium wilt, nematodes, and tomato hornworms. Many of these problems can be controlled with crop rotation, the use of fungicides and pesticides, and the planting of resistant varieties. The tiny currant tomato, S. pimpinellifolium, is a closely related species and has been used by breeders to hybridize several pest and disease-resistant tomato varieties. About growing tomatoes. Tomato plants are tender warm season crops and cannot bear frost. It's important not to put plants in the ground too early. In most regions, the soil is not warm enough to plant tomatoes outdoors until late spring and early summer except in Zone 10, where they are a fall and winter crop. Tomatoes are sun worshippers. In northern regions, tomato plants will need at least 6 hours of sunlight daily, 8 to 10 hours are preferred. In southern regions, light afternoon shade, natural or applied, for example, row covers, will help tomatoes to survive and thrive. Tomatoes take 60 days to more than 100 days to harvest, depending on the variety. See more about varieties below. Due to their relatively long growing season requirements, and late planting date, most gardeners plant small starter plants or transplants instead of seeds. Choose young tomato plants from a reputable nursery. Good starter plants are short and stocky with dark green color and straight, sturdy stems about the size of a pencil or thicker. They should not have yellowing leaves, spots, or stress damage nor have flowers or fruits already in progress. Types of tomatoes. Determinate tomatoes, better known as bush varieties, grow 2 to 3 feet tall. These varieties tend to provide numerous ripe tomatoes at one time, do not put on much leaf growth after setting fruit, and tend to fruit for a, relatively, brief period of time. They are generally productive earlier than the vining varieties, and not in the latter part of the growing season. Determinate tomatoes did not require staking or caging. These plants are ideal for containers and small spaces. Most paste tomatoes are determined, which works well for making sauce and canning. Indeterminate tomatoes, better known as vining varieties, produce the largest types of mid to late season slicing tomatoes all summer and until the first frost. Because indeterminates experience more leaf growth, their production tends to be spread more evenly throughout the season. Indeterminate tomatoes need staking. They are ideal in large gardeners. Most beefsteak and cherry tomatoes are indeterminate. Selecting a location. Select a site with full sun and, ideally, a space where tomatoes, and members of their family, especially eggplants, peppers, and potatoes, have not grown in the previous couple of years. Dig soil to about 1 foot deep and mix in aged manure and/or compost. Give it 2 weeks to break down before planting. Starting tomato seeds. Most gardeners purchase starter tomato plants from a nursery, due to the long growing season for a warm weather crop. See our planting calendar for when to start tomatoes. However, tomato seeds can be started indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last spring frost date. Sow seeds a ½ inch deep in small trays. For seed starting dates specific to your area and our article on tomatoes from Seed the Easy Way for more tips. Or, tomatoes can be direct sown in the garden at ½ inch depth, but not before the soil is at least 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Note that 70 degrees Fahrenheit soil is optimum for maximum germination within 5 days. Be certain that your growing season is long enough to bring the plants to maturity. Starting tomato seeds. Most gardeners purchase starter tomato plants from a nursery, due to the long growing season for a warm weather crop. However, tomato seeds can be started indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last spring frost date. Sow seeds a ½ inch deep in small trays. For seed starting dates specific to your area and our article on tomatoes from Seed the Easy Way for more tips. Or, tomatoes can be direct sown in the garden at ½ inch depth, but not before the soil is at least 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Note that 70 degrees Fahrenheit soil is optimum for maximum germination within 5 days. Be certain that your growing season is long enough to bring the plants to maturity. Hardening off. Harden off your own seedlings for a week before transplanting them in the ground. Set them outdoors in the shade for a few hours on the first day. Gradually increase this time each day to include some direct sunlight. Transplanting. Transplant your seedlings, or your nursery grown plants, into the ground outdoors after all danger of frost has passed and the soil is at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Place tomato stakes or cages in the soil at planting. Staking and caging keep developing fruit off the ground, to avoid disease and pests, and also help the plant to stay upright. Optional when you transplant tomatoes, add a handful of organic tomato fertilizer or bone meal, a good source of phosphorus, to the planting hole. Do not apply high nitrogen fertilizers such as those recommended for lawns, as this will promote luxurious foliage but can delay flowering and fruiting. When planting seedlings, pinch off a few of the lower leaves. Here are 2 ways to set seedlings in the soil. Place each root ball deep enough such that the bottom leaves are just above the surface of the soil. Roots will grow all along the plant's stem underground. Plant seedlings 2 to 3 feet apart. Crowded plants will not get sufficient sun and the fruit may not ripen. Alternatively, lay long, leggy transplants on their sides in trenches 3 to 4 inches deep. Bury the stems up to the first set of true leaves. Roots will develop along the buried stem. If you plant this way, consider setting 4 tomato plants in compass point positions, north, south, east, west. This formation enables you to fertilize and water the plants in the middle. Remember to allow enough space for the plants to spread out. Water well to reduce shock to the roots. That's all about the video this time. See you again in channel's Secret Paradise.